Hello and welcome back to the Bookshelf Odyssey. My name is Art, and today I want to talk about a couple of reading events coming up in March and April and give you a TBR. The first one in March is being hosted by Novell Novels, and I've been a follower of Emily's channel for a couple years, I believe, and I enjoy her channel quite a bit. She loves classics like I do. And she's doing a Bronte Readathon in March. She'll be hosting a readathon, and I'll make sure to link her announcement video down below. And you can check that out if you'd like to read some Bronte this March. Before we get into her prompts, I want to share also what's happening in April. On my channel, I'll be hosting what I'm calling Gaskell in April, or Gaskapril. It's a clunky name. We got to think of something better, but it's sticking. And what I will be doing is reading Wives and Daughters. I have not read Wives and Daughters before. It's my last full-length Gaskell novel I have left to read. So I am going to open that up to the community to read along with me. I'll leave a link in the show notes to a Discord page I'm going to set up as well, and try and keep the conversation on that channel. I'm not the best at keeping up on Discord and Voxer and things like that, but feel free to chat without me if that's what happens. So, but I'll have a room set up for that, or a page set up for that, and I'm really looking forward to reading Wives and Daughters. I have heard many people say that it is the best of Gaskell's novels, and it was her last one. I am a bit worried that from what I understand, the last couple of pages weren't finished before she died, but just about everyone who's read it has said you can't really tell, or it doesn't really matter, because the story is fairly well summed up and tidied up by that point. So we'll see. If you don't want to read Wives and Daughters, but you would love to be a part of that conversation, you're more than welcome to. You don't, especially if you're familiar with the story and just want to participate in the chat, that's fine. I'm going to be the one reading. I'll have a reading schedule if you want to read along with me, but for the most part, it'll be just anyone who wants to talk about Wives and Daughters will be welcome to do that. You don't have to read it. It's not a necessity. But okay, let's talk about the Brontes today. They are three of my favorite Victorian writers, and the fact that all three were sisters and they grew up together, obviously, it's so fascinating how they all three were able to become, on their own, very, very good writers. And it's painful to me to realize that both, really all three, but especially Emily and Anne Bronte, died so young and had so much potential. I've said before, as much as I didn't care for Emily's Wuthering Heights, what she could have accomplished if she had lived long enough to write more. I don't know. It just makes me wonder what could have happened. But I've enjoyed all their novels. Jane Eyre is one of Charlotte Bronte's novels, probably her most famous one. And it is one that I would recommend for people wanting to get into Victorian literature, especially. I recommend that. There's some things of the book I don't like, I don't care for. One of them being Rochester. I also struggle with liking him as a character, but overall it's a good book, and Jane's journey through that book is just incredible. But the prompts for the Bronte Readathon are as follows, and I don't know how many of these I'll do, but I'll give some I'll give some suggestions for some of the prompts if I can think of any. So first of all, read a book by one of the Brontes. Well, that'll be easy enough, I think. And this year I had planned to reread Shirley, So that's what I'll be doing. I believe I've only read it once and I listened to it on audiobook, I believe. And I remember enjoying it, although the details of the plot are kind of hazy. And that's why I really like rereading, because it gives me time to dig into the material and read it a couple of times. I get such benefit from rereading, especially classics. I don't know if my brain just needs multiple exposure to a book. Maybe I read too fast. I don't know. That's always a possibility. I have really loved reading and rereading classics. So this just to read a little bit of the of what the book is about. It says that the Shirley of the title is a woman of independent means. Her friend Caroline is not, or Caroline is not. Both struggle with what a woman's role is and can be. Their male counterparts, Louis, the powerless tutor, and Robert, his cloth manufacturing brother, also stand at odds to society's expectations. I remember really enjoying that book, and it was either Shirley or Villette of Charlotte's that I actually liked more than Jane Eyre. But I've only read all of her books through once. And so now that I've read all of the Bronte novels, I'm going to start rereading through them and really get the story cemented in my mind. And I don't remember how long ago I read it. It was probably 4 or 5 years ago. I'm going to be rereading that maybe at a more slower rate and really digging in to what Shirley is all about. So I'm looking forward to that. I also picked up a Tales of Angria, Charlotte Bronte, by Charlotte Bronte, although I thought maybe her siblings had helped write these stories too. I don't recall now. But this is a collection of her Angrian tales, which I believe she wrote as a child or a teenager or a young woman. It was some of the stories that they would tell each other. And from what I read in a biography, it was just this really imaginative, rich fantasy story. So I thought about reading those, but I think I'll save that for Victober. I might read those for Victober this year. Anne Bronte only wrote 2, and I would recommend The Tenant of Wildfell Hall. It's a powerful story for many reasons, and it's a well-written story. The hook of that story that really gets me is understanding the plight of women at that time and what happens if they're in a bad marriage by a cruel husband. What resources do they have? What help is available to them, and what can they do if they were in danger, were being mistreated? Not a lot. And that book explores that, but there, along with some other themes that I really enjoyed when I read it, and that would be one I'd recommend from her, although both of her books are excellent. And then Emily, of course, wrote only Wuthering Heights. And if you go into that story understanding what the book is, I went into the first time I read it like it was, I thought it was a love story, like a sweet love story, or maybe even a gothic love story. But it's more of like a story of revenge, of unpleasant people manipulating and hurting each other, and yet being attracted to each other. I think I heard one booktuber describe it as what this book is about: what happens when two awful people fall in love with each other. And I kind of like that. So that's the first prompt: read a book by one of the Brontes. Second is to read a dark book. Emily especially, although even Charlotte has some gothic elements in some of her novels. Jane Eyre would be a classic example of that. So read a dark book is the next prompt. And there's a lot of wonderful dark books that you could read. If you want to keep it Victorian or classic, obviously some of the obvious examples would be Dracula or Frankenstein by Mary Shelley is a good one. Every time I read that book, I'm shocked by it because the way Frankenstein, the monster, is portrayed in movies and everything, the book resembles nothing like the movies. And it's a really interesting novel. If you want something more modern to counterbalance that, let me recommend you a couple I've read recently, and I'll be doing a video on these books coming up, or I would have just done it. I'm not sure the order I'll put these out. It's called You'd Look Better as a Ghost by Joanna Wallace, and it's about a female serial killer, and it's very dark humor. And the book describes her as a part-time serial killer, whatever that even means. In the early part of the book, she kills a couple of people who she felt has wronged her. One, you could almost say was justified. The other was maybe she was just kind of having a bad day. But into that story, then somebody thinks they've discovered her secret, and now she's getting caught up in this. Is my secret going to be exposed? How do I get rid of this person who's threatening to expose me and continue on being a serial killer? Very dark humor, but I enjoy dipping into that once in a while. So if you wanted something completely different from the Brontes, that would be one I'd recommend that I had read just recently. The third prompt is read a book with siblings. Now, again, the Brontes were sisters. I think their relationship and how they would write their novels, from what I read, that they would often spend time writing together. So it was like this, almost like this creative community as they wrote, that maybe they would read portions of their book to each other, or their poetry, and get feedback and have like this ongoing dialogue as they wrote together. That's how I imagine it anyway, from some of the biographies I've read. And I think that's such a brilliant way to create a story, almost as you create it in community. And so siblings are a very powerful theme when you consider who the Brontes are. In fact, I mean, I do it all the time. Many of us consider them as one unit. When I talk about my favorite writers, the Brontes, I'll put all three in, even though maybe that's not fair to them. They each had their own individual style and personality and everything, but that's just where my mind goes. And of course they had a brother, Branwell, I believe his name was. I should have done some research here. And then if I remember right, they had actually two younger sisters who passed away at a very early age. And I mean, the whole Bronte family story is just a tragic story. If you'll allow me to be sidetracked here for a moment. By the time Charlotte died, their father was still alive, but his wife had died, all of his children had died, and he was left alone with his son-in-law who had married Charlotte. And I can't even imagine just the pain of that. Very, very hard. All right, so a story with siblings. If you, again, want to stick with a classic, I would recommend Dombey and Son by Charles Dickens. That's a book I just read recently, and it tells the story of Florence Dombey and her brother Paul Dombey, and their father has very little time or respect for her, as I think he wanted a son. He has a son. He's proud about his son, but her not so much. So it's a very interesting look at the family dynamic. Yeah, Dombey and Son is great. It is a good book. It is tragic. It is funny. It is heartwarming. It is romantic. It's exciting. It just is a great blend of all those things together. I read it just recently with a follower of my channel, Daryl, along with Elle from Elle Thinks, from her channel, or Elle Reads. Why can't I ever remember your channel name, Elle? Anyway, we read that together. I know Katie over at Books and Things has a video about 5 Victorian novels about siblings, and I'll link her video here if I remember. But that would be a good option to look at for that prompt. And then The fourth prompt is called "Read a book with a character or author called Emily." Well, you could make it real easy and read Wuthering Heights, which pretty much takes care of all four prompts, at least, maybe at least three of the four prompts. So you could just cheat and do that. If you want something a little more modern with a little bit of spice, or maybe a lot of spice, depending on how you like your books, I would recommend Book Lovers by Emily Henry. To me, it actually feels like a little bit of a modern riff on Pride and Prejudice. And this book is like what the rivals to lovers kind of romance plot. Now, if I remember right, it's been a while since I've read this. She's like the character in a Hallmark movie that the guy breaks up with so he can marry his hometown sweetheart. The hero of the movie. And the question kind of is, what happens to the woman who gets broken up with, when in those love triangle type stories. And this is her story. Anyway, so she loves books, and the description says that she agrees that her sister convinces her to go to a town called Sunshine Falls, North Carolina, for the month of August, when Libby, her sister, begs Nora for a sister's trip away, with visions of a small town transformation for Nora, who she's convinced needs to become the heroine in her own story. But instead of picnics in meadows, or run-ins with a handsome country doctor, or bulging four-armed bartenders, Nora keeps bumping into Charlie Lastra, a bookish, brooding editor from back in the city. It would be a meet cute if not for the fact that they've met many times and it's never been cute. And I enjoyed that story quite a bit. I didn't enjoy all the spice in it, but overall the story was pretty fun. So if you want something, if that's your jam, then I'd recommend that. I know her books are pretty popular. And that might be why this might be one of those booktube made me read it kind of books. And but yeah, I like it, and I love the cover of the book. It's pretty cute. But yeah, it's good story. So that would be something else you could try outside of the classic genre. Okay, well those are just the four prompts. Again, pretty low key. I think she might have a I don't know if she has like a Discord channel or a story graph page or something where they'll be talking about this, but I wanted to join in reading since I had planned to read Shirley sometime this year. I thought I might as well do that in March. And I'm looking forward to seeing what some of the videos that Emily has planned on her channel. I know she and Katie will be discussing the Brontes on a live video towards the end of March. And then after that, if you still want to read some Victorian goodness, stick around, because again, I'll be reading Wives and Daughters. I'll probably post weekly videos of my reading journey through that book, and so kind of that week's reflections on what I have just read. Hopefully could have a busy month. I'm gonna do what I can with that, but I really would like to have some kind of a video journal of my reading of Wives and Daughters. So stay tuned for that. Make sure you like and subscribe this video, as that really helps. Subscribe to my channel. I think I was at 850 the last time I looked. So we're getting so much more closer to 1,000 subscribers, which I find so exciting. Again, also let me know if you want to participate in Gask April. Comment down below. And as always, until next time, happy reading and take care.